Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the I Am 1-2 podcast with your host, Christopher Cohn. And with me always is my dear friend and cohort and producer, Dan the Man. Say hello to all the kids out there.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you, Dan. We're having a blast bringing this podcast to you, and thank you for joining us today. We have a very deep topic that I think affects everybody in your life in some way or form as fashion if you're a human being, so you'll enjoy that today. If you're just joining us, the name I Am 1-2 comes from a phrase in one of our groups we started here in Louisville, which is available to anybody who wants to learn about the 12 steps. And we didn't know what to say because we didn't want to use the terms alcoholic. We don't want to use the terms overeater because those labels tend to separate us in our issues. So we wanted to have a common bond that we're just all struggling human beings trying to get through this daggone world with all the sickness we're all thrown at. Every day is thrown at us. And I want to need some tools. So that's what the phrase I am 1-2 means, is I am another struggling human being just trying to learn some new tools that will work to make my life better. And you're welcome here. My background is I am a licensed clinical alcohol and drug counselor, 21 years experience, board certified in the state of Kentucky. I also have 40 years of recovery, and I grew up in an alcoholic family. And this podcast starts out, we're talking about recovery from addiction and things like that, but we're going to talk about a multitude of issues that has to do with just living your best life and trying to deal with the sickness that's out there that we all encounter each day in our fellows. So today is a topic that I think everybody needs to hear, and I hope it will help you a lot in your journey as well. Any thoughts before we get started, Dan? You having a good day today? Everything going good with the man over there? He tends to sit in the closet over there. We don't get to hear from that much. But
yeah. We get to hear from me plenty. But yes, it's been a good day. Continues to be. Frankly, doing these podcasts raises my spirits when we do them. So.
It's win-win, isn't it?
Yeah, but it does. It is at times a little busy over on this side of the table. I'm taking the last episode we had and pushing it up to the cloud so I could access it from another computer and try to do as much as I can while I'm sitting here.
Let me tell you something, folks. Dan needs comments because this man is dedicating a lot of hours during the week to putting these episodes together and doing all the editing and all the processing and getting it uploaded and setting the dates for when things are going to be released. So please give a nice shout out to Dan in the comments. He could use a little love out there. Yeah. And we try to release our podcast every Wednesday. So if you're looking for us, look every Wednesday or subscribe, and you'll get the notification when the new ones are popping up. We're putting a bunch of them in the can ahead of time because we know with summer and Dan's retreat coming up next weekend, we're going to have some time off. But please join us every week. We'll always have great topics for you that will hopefully help you get through this thing called life.
Yeah, get a little ahead so that we can maintain that schedule.
Because you never know when life is going to happen, right? Yep. So, hopefully none of us get sick or anything happens, but hopefully we'll have plenty of content and keep it coming for you. We won't have any dry spells. So let's get right to today's topic because it is deep and wide, just like our meditation was in the last go-around. If you watched that one, thanks for joining us. We're just going to talk about our relationship with food and about our food supply today and about being addictive and about how it's affecting all of us, not only in our physical health, but also in our mental health. And we're not being taught these things because our doctors have not been trained as to why our culture in America has the worst health. Of all the nations in the world, we have the highest, most amazing healthcare system, and yet we have the lowest rates of health for heart. We have highest rates of heart disease, highest rates of diabetes. All this stuff is going on in our culture, and nobody's putting two and two together that it's our food supply that has changed, not us. And like we said in the first episode, there's one thing I want to start with to caution everything I throw at you today, and that is to keep in your mind the title of our first podcast, which was about addiction. And the title of that podcast was It's Not Your Fault. And I want you to hold that in your mind as I unveil all this information, some of which might be new, some of which you may have already heard. But when I was being first turned on to a lot of this, it was completely overwhelming. And I find that experience with a lot of people that it's so overwhelming they almost tune out. So just remember, this isn't your fault. We're all just being victims of our environment, products of our environment. And none of us chose to have this kind of food that's being foisted upon us. It just is available everywhere, for God's sakes. So let's start at the very beginning. Every human being has a very intimate relationship with food. It really is our earliest bond, with our mother being breastfed, if that's what happened, getting that sustenance and that nourishment and that sense of love and care and safety from our parents. And then we go on in our families and in our cultures and communities where food is used as a tool of celebration. When we have gatherings, we have Thanksgiving, we have other holidays, we have cultural traditions around food, we have particular foods in each culture. It is deep in our psyche, our relationship with food. And it's been corrupted over the years, not by our own fault, but by industrial processes that have happened as the result of corporations and companies just trying to make more money. That's what they exist for. It's not their fault. It's not a conspiracy. It's right out there in the open. They want to appease their stockholders. And to do that, they have to cut costs and raise profit. And if they're not doing those two things, then the CEOs get voted out. So let me explain where my experience was with this to start with. I was part of the beginning curve of this experiment that I feel like is being done on humanity that people are just waking up to. I was raised in the 60s, and the 60s was the first advent of really these convenience foods. Mom was getting her liberation. My mom was on the front lines of women's liberation in the 60s, fighting the good fight. And Mom needed a way to feed the kids that was easy. And she was not at home as much. And so we had TV dinners, and I remember those very well. It's like, it's all wholesome. You got your meat, you got your vegetable, you got your little apple pie on the corner. And it was Frankenfood, as we call it today. It wasn't real, but that's what we were raised on. Sometimes I'm astonished that I'm even still alive with the amount of fake food I've been eating in my lifetime. And I'll explain what that means in a minute. And as we've progressed, the food companies have learned how to manipulate certain ingredients and the combinations they're putting of fat, salt, and sugar into foods to make them more appetizing or /addictive. Because why? Because if you buy more product, they make more money. It's not a conspiracy. It's right out in the open. They want you to eat more Doritos because then you'll buy more Doritos. Okay? So what we call this group of foods is ultra-processed foods, UPFs. And where it started from is when you look at the term processed foods, man has been processing food since the beginning of time. If you cook it, you chop it, you add spice to it, you put it on a grill, that's processing, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. The food underneath that is still wholesome. It's in its original form. Ultra-processed food came about that they figured out we can take these ingredients and we can break them down into powders, into almost dust. And then we can build them back based on these formulas we found out. And they test these things over and over in laboratory studies. I've seen some of the film where they'll have like blind studies. They'll have people behind these little slots, and they'll give them the food between the slot. Then the person has to rate which one tastes better or which one would they buy just by tweaking the formula a little bit. Now, unfortunately, what happens in that process of breaking down the food to its base level, you're destroying its nutritional value. So if you take wheat and you break it down into this dust, it no longer has the fiber content it has. It no longer has the full nutritional wholesomeness that it had originally. And the food companies have figured out over the years how to exploit the weaknesses of the brain, because we do have a brain that's going to gravitate towards sugar or towards fat because that means survival to us. That way back in hundreds of thousands of years ago, we did not eat that often. Okay. If you found food, your brain would tell you eat as much as you can without throwing it up, because you don't know when you're going to eat again. And we have gone from that kind of environment to just 100 years now. We now have an environment where there's food available in every corner, and it's coming at you all the time. I laugh, I'll try to be eating good that day, and I'll go to work, and somebody has put 2 dozen donuts on top of my chart rack. I don't know why it's my chart rack. It just happens to be up front in the hallway where everybody else's chart rack is. And I'll be doing my notes looking at donuts. And I'm like, I'm trying not to eat that today. And then I walk down the hallway, and right next to my door where my office is a snack machine and a soda machine. And it's just available everywhere. Once you wake up and start looking at, oh my God, they're pushing this on us everywhere we go, and on our poor kids in the schools. There are some schools that are starting to outlaw soda machines and snack machines in the schools, but most of them have been slow to wake up to what it's doing to their growth and their development of their brain. So let's back up again. When you break it down to those powders and they start building it up into something new, you no longer have the original food. It becomes a sort of processed product. And as a teacher I listen to a lot, it becomes a product of profit. It's not a product of nutrition. It's not a product to help you with your health. This is now a product of profit. And why do we fall into this system? Like I said, the companies need to make money to stay in business. They have to appease the shareholders. But he even explains that you have investors, which is you and I, and we all want our 401ks to do well. So if we're invested in an index fund and Kellogg's or some other company is part of that index fund, we want that company to be doing very well because that raises our 401k. So we're caught up in this cycle. Now, ultra-processed food, you might be wondering, well, how do I identify it? They literally say when you go to the grocery store, everything on the sides and everything on the back row, that's usually regular food. That's where you find the milk, the eggs, the meat, the fruit. It's all on the sides. In the middle, anything that is in a shiny packaged product, if you will start looking at ingredients, and that's where you begin your journey to understand how these foods are starting to affect us. You will find things on there like usually it's the first three things you have to look for. There'll be the first three ingredients. It'll be a cheap grain. It'll be a sugar of some kind, and there's way too much sugar in our diet. We'll talk about that. And it'll be a cheap oil. Now, the grain will almost always be wheat or corn. Wheat or corn are subsidized by the United States government. So farmers get paid whether their crop makes it or it doesn't make it or how much they sell or they don't sell. They figure that's good for farmers. I got no problem with that, but it makes it cheaper for the companies to buy. So they're buying the cheapest grain they could possibly buy that's not really good for you because that's carbohydrates that's break down, raises your blood sugar. It's not good for you in the long term. Vegetable oils. These are not made of vegetables. These are industrial oils produced in factories that are made out of products that you probably wouldn't put in your own gas tank in your car. And those vegetables oils will be things like soybean oil, canola oil, palm kernel oil, saffron oil, all that stuff, fancy terms, but it's all part of industrial fake oils. It's not olive oil, which comes from a plant. It's not avocado oil, which comes from a plant. It's totally made in a factory. And then after that, you got a sugar, although you'll have about 5 or 6 sugars in products you didn't think had sugar in it. You'll be eating pasta or bread and not realizing that breaks down into immediate sugar in your body. But if you look at the ingredients, you're going to see sugar, maltodextrin, which is a sugar, dextrose, which is a sugar, brown rice syrup, rice soy syrup, tapioca syrup, molasses. You'll see 5 different sugars in there, which is actually the number one thing driving our ill health right now is the fact that we have way too much sugar that we're absorbing in our food supply, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But right now, just to identify, I want to get you all to just be curious and start looking at the products you have in your cupboard right now and see if there are ingredients that you would have at home that you could make a dinner out of yourself. That is really, I've heard, the best way to identify ultra-processed foods. If it's made of ingredients that you don't keep in the cabinet to make your own food at home, then it's fake. Okay? There's also a couple of other things you have to watch out for. Emulsifiers. Emulsifiers like, it's escaping me right, xanthan, I think. Xanthan is one of them. But it's a binding agent, but also acts as a detergent. So that's also not good for your gut because it scrubs out all your good microbiome. Emulsifiers and enriched product. Anything that says it's been enriched, what they've literally done is they've broken down the food to a level where there's nothing nutritional left in it, so they sprayed some vitamins on it as it was going down the assembly line. So if it says enriched flour or supplemented or anything like that, that means fake vitamins sprayed on top. Most cereals have that. Cereal has no value once they break it down and make the cornflakes out of it, but they'll spray the vitamins on top, and that's how it shows it has vitamins in there. And then the other thing is to watch out for, besides enrichment, is natural flavors. Natural flavor seems like it would be a good thing, right? It's natural. But what they're literally telling you is that we have broken down this food to the point where it no longer has any flavor. So we had to create flavors in a lab, little formulas and little chemicals to make these flavors. And that's also what's hurting us the most is the chemicals that are in the food. There's unbelievable amounts besides the pesticides that are used within fruits and in our meat supply, but just the chemicals they're using in the factories to make the food. Now, what is the result of all this? Well, right now in America, we have skyrocketing numbers of heart disease, diabetes especially, and the one I want to really warn you about today is Alzheimer's. If you haven't heard yet, Alzheimer's is now being called diabetes 3. We know for a fact it is the sugar from the food supply that is causing inflammation in the brain, and that inflammation of the brain is leading to amyloid plaques and other things that we know are associated with dementia and Alzheimer's. And we used to not have these diseases on this level. If you go back just 40, 50, 60 years ago when people were still eating whole foods, people were not getting sick on this level. And not only are regular people getting sick, but our children are getting sick on a level that has never happened. Diabetes rarely occurred in children in the past history of America. Now it's like an epidemic. And I had a person in my group recently who just found out they have fatty liver disease, and it's not from alcohol. It's from diet. And they're only 30 years old. That's way too young to be having your liver. And the doctor's telling him, well, you can correct this, but if you don't, within 5 to 10 years, you might be dead. And this is from not knowing what's in our food supply. So I'm going to give you some hints and some tips of some things to watch out for. But worse off of anything else, what is happening with these ultra-processed foods is they are driving addiction. So there's two factors that are going into you. You might be wondering, is food addictive? If you'll look up studies by Nora Volka, she was the head of the National Institute of Drug Abuse. She's an amazing genius. She will show you these slides where they have measured people's brains on sugar and on crack. And it lights up the same parts of the brain for dopamine. It lights it up like a Christmas tree. It is addictive, but it's worse than addictive. The modern food supply, the ultra-processed food, since it's been stripped so much and they have to add so much fat into it, so much sugar into it, it's what they call hyperpalatable now, which means your taste buds will taste that first Dorito or whatever it is, and your brain will light up and go, oh, yeah, that's a lot more satisfying than a piece of broccoli. You can do that experiment at home. I dare you to lay out 5 Cheetos and lay out 1 piece of broccoli. See which one your brain reacts to. And you can see that light up in your head. And again, this is just from our Paleolithic brain that was like going to find the source. If you found a source that had more sugar in it or more meat in it or protein in it, you were going to go to that source rather than go over here, because that would mean you could eat more and it would last longer than if you ate the other thing. Okay, so it's about choosing. We're going to gravitate towards those foods which are going to give us more bang for the buck, just because our brain is telling us it's giving more bang for the buck. Second thing that's driving addiction, when you eat these fake foods, it will send a signal to your brain that nutrition is on the way. It will say, okay, he's eating something. I taste the fat. It might not be fat. It might be processed chemicals making that. If it's low fat, they've stripped all the fat out of there that was natural, and they've added fake fat in there to take its place. It'll send the signal to your brain that nutrition is on the way, but it's not hitting the gut. It's not getting the same nutrition if you're eating a steak versus eating a bag of Doritos. It's not going to hit the gut the same. So your brain will tell you, keep eating. One, it's there. So I told you all, because of our training from thousands of years ago of not knowing when we're going to eat again, your brain's going to tell you to eat while you got the bag in front of you, but it's going to drive more eating because you're not satisfied. You're not fulfilled. Your hunger is not being satiated. And those two things are leading to an epidemic of obesity and all the medical problems that go with it. And on the last episode, I told you about my dear friend Darren, who's in the hospital bed dealing with his diabetes issues and wasn't able to stop eating the foods. And I myself, as I've tried to go on this journey to learn about these products, make better decisions, you'll still go through the store and end up with the stuff in your shopping cart and say, why am I buying this? If I take it home, I'm going to eat it. If I don't bring it home, then I don't have the opportunity to eat it. I have to go out and get it. But it is hard. I want you to know this is going to be a journey you're going to go on, and it's going to take years maybe to turn it around. And you need to give yourself permission for this. Remember, we've got decades of programming that this is the way we eat, and especially if your diet's really bad. And so be patient and be gentle with yourself as you're trying to turn this around. And like I said at the beginning of the episode, please don't let this information overwhelm you. I think, and I've always believed, information is power. So the more I know, the better well-informed decisions I can make. I'm a big fan of if you have a victory. I used to visit a couple of Overeaters Anonymous meetings. I wanted to check it out back in the day, and they would say, if you are able to you buy a chocolate cake and you only eat half of it, not the whole thing, that's a victory worth celebrating. And I agree. That would be progress for a person. One of the things that I do is when I'm going to eat not that great, I at least try to have a good piece of fruit or a vegetable with it that sort of maybe counteracts some of the effects. We had a food truck at work today, and it wasn't bad food, but it was noodles, and noodles turn right to sugar. So I try to have something a little bit healthy on top of that. And protein and fat are a good counteractor to sugar. But you can learn about this stuff, and it's all over YouTube. I'll give you a couple of links to think about at the end of the show. But go on that journey to investigate. What am I putting in my mouth, and how is that affecting my physical health? Now I'm about to blow your mind even more. Guess what we're figuring out? Our food supply is affecting our mental health. As I told you about giving us Alzheimer's and dementia, anything that affects the brain is going to drive other mental illnesses. They are right now doing serious scientific studies. These are paid for, serious-ass scientific studies to study how our moods with anxiety, with depression, bipolar, and even schizophrenia is really possibly driven by diet. And I'll explain how that works. Not only that, they're also looking obviously into ADHD, and they're looking into, what was the other one? I forgot. But this is something that we have a certain amount of control over, right? I can keep going to my doctor and getting meds, or I can keep going here and there and trying to find out what's wrong. But maybe it's because I'm not eating right, and my body is sending me these signals of anxiety, trying to get me to do something else instead of the same old stuff. But we're all stuck in our patterns, and they're very hard to break. So what we know today, and we didn't know this information until about 10, 15, 20 years ago, especially about the mood. This is real new. This is like 10 years ago. This information is now just being understood about how it affects our mood. So what they have found out, in your gut, you have this thing called a microbiome. And in your gut, you've got this perfect mixture between good bacteria and bad bacteria if you're healthy and you're eating well. Anything we put into our body puts that either more in tune or more out of whack. And unfortunately, all the ultra-processed foods kill the good bacteria, encourage the growth of the bad bacteria, and then that drives ill health. Because if you have an unequal number of bad bacteria to good bacteria, it's going to cause you to be in ill health. The other thing they discovered is that, believe it or not, you have more neurotransmitters for serotonin in your gut than you actually have in your brain. Now, this is completely revolutionary. Throw everything we knew out the window when it comes to psychiatric science. To this day, and this is from neuroscientists, this is from psychotherapists, these are people who are in the field studying this, telling us that doctors are prescribing mood stabilizers and antidepressants and all that stuff, thinking that you have a chemical imbalance in your brain, and that's why you have depression. You have a chemical imbalance in your brain, and that's why you're bipolar. So let us treat that through the brain. That's not what's happening. We're actually beginning to understand it's your gut. If your gut is out of balance, those neurotransmitters are not producing serotonin, you're going to be depressed. It's a deep hole we're just beginning to understand. And I'd love to be able to put this information out there. If this is all mind-blowing to you who never heard it before, it was mind-blowing to me. And I've gone on a deep rabbit hole to listen to every expert, and I listen to serious medical doctors, people who are credentialed, people who are scientists. I don't listen to the conspiracy crap. This is real science, and you're going to hear more about it. It's a funny thing in our culture. What's the biggest topic about our kids and about health in America? We're all obese, right? We're all overweight. You know what they're not saying? It's not easy to quit because you're addicted. That frustrates me more than anything else because it's a lie. They're not telling us the truth. They're saying, well, you need to eat better. You don't need vitamins. If you just eat right, you have plenty of... That's a lie too. How can I eat right when my food is ultra-processed? And we've also over-farmed the soil. So I'm not getting the same benefit out of that potato that my great-grandfather got out of that potato. It's a lie that supplements wouldn't help. But I have doctors to this day who will fight me on that. One of my doctors will say, we have the most expensive piss of anybody, us Americans, because we buy those worthless supplements. And I'm like, well, I'm happy you feel that way, but that's not the science of it. So I'm encouraging everyone to take this information today to just go on the journey of looking at your diet, objectively looking at packaging, looking at why you gravitate towards certain products and how you feel like you can't break that cycle for yourself, because it's not an easy cycle to break. I'm in the middle of it right now, but I will tell you it can be done. One of the guys I listen to, his name is Chris Van Tolkien, Tullken. And you can look up his podcast or his show about what is ultra-processed food. And he will tell you that when you're trying to quit eating your junk food, don't actually quit while you're learning about it. And what he uses is this great scientific literature from quitting smoking. There were these studies that were done that if you tell a smoker everything that's bad about smoking and educate them and keep reinforcing what they're doing to their body with each puff while they are continuing to smoke, it is such an effective program to quit smoking that the American Cancer Society has adopted this as their number one primary tool for people who want to quit smoking. So he has adopted that to food. He says the same exact philosophy, which is to keep eating as you're reading the products. As you're reading the ingredients and then Googling what dextrose is and maltodextrin and finding out, ooh, that's what I'm putting in my body. And then notice if that chip starts to taste a little bit different to you. Now, it's an interesting science about addiction. Addiction can sometimes be more about the desire to get it and the craving than the actual getting it. And I defy any of my addict friends out there to prove me wrong on this, because I know you've experienced this, that you got to a place where your drugs were not working as well as they used to, and it almost seemed like you were getting more high from the experience of going to get it and the anticipation and excitement that you were going to get it. And then when you did it, you were like, well, that wasn't really as great as I thought it was. That's what I'm currently experiencing in my journey to separate myself from these foods, that when I do buy the bag of Cheetos or whatever, and that excitement, like, ooh, I got the and you know, this packaging is designed, it's got the orange, bright red colors and the character on there. It looks like fun. It's about partying and good times. So I'm like, oh, I got something fun. I'm going to have some fun in my life. And then I open it and I start eating it. The first bite is always like that, wow, right? That first bite is that, ooh, that's not broccoli. And then I take the second, the third, and then I start doing bunches into my mouth, and I'm like, yeah, this isn't really hitting the spot. And I can feel that disconnect between nutrition is on the way, no, it's not. And then I overeat it. And then I notice how I feel afterwards. And then I notice how I feel the next morning. There's always a hangover effect from eating crappy food. Notice how that feels in the morning to wake up groggy and a little bit dull, and your brain's not firing right, and you just feel a little bit like, what the hell? I didn't drink last night. Why am I feeling so funky? It's the food. But a lot of us have eaten so much of it that we don't even recognize that as abnormal. We've actually adapted to feeling not good. And I was there. In my personal journey, and I want to talk about this with all my fellow addict friends for a second. When you get sober from alcohol and drugs, or any other thing you might be into, if you're an overeater, an over technology, whatever, when you put down your old addiction, almost invariably another addiction will begin to surface. Now, the way I describe it to my patients is I say, when you're doing your inventory work, go back as a child and see what tools you used to cope before you found alcohol and drugs, because having addiction means you had a state of mind that was a little bit off since you were born, and you didn't feel quite comfortable in your own skin. You didn't quite feel like you fit in. You just felt weird. But what did you use? I mean, I got a good friend of mine. He said he used to go read, and he would just disappear into Lord of the Rings or deep, long books and just go off and do his own thing, and that was his way of soothing himself. I know for a fact, as I've done my inventory work, my very first drug was sugar. I would do whatever I could to get more. I would work my mom to get my sugar dessert, even if I didn't eat my vegetables. So I'd hide my vegetables in a napkin and throw them behind the dryer until the dryer broke, and they took the dryer off the wall and they figured out, what's all this here? Or I would steal cookies out of the cabinet and they'd say, who did that? And I'd blame my brother. I wanted more. I could feel that as a child. So in early recovery, I can look back now and see how I medicated myself with food in early recovery. There's usually 2, 3, 4 areas that people get into in early recovery. They overwork, they overeat, or they oversex. Those seem to be the biggest ones. And I know for a fact, man, I had episodes where I would literally gorge. I had binge patterns where I would, go to the store, and if anybody out there has done that, you're not alone. And I would just go through the store and buy everything I wanted to eat that was bad for me, and then spend the weekend eating it and then feel like absolute crap. But I was getting through sober. And you know what? That's okay. I didn't use alcohol and drugs. But it's common. I want you to understand that second stage recovery, there's always a second addiction that arises. But if that's true about me, and it may be true about you, that also means that that's been around a long time and it's not going to break easily. You can't just say quit sugar. Like if my doctor says to me, oh, you're going to die, you need to quit. I'm like my friend Darren. I can't just fucking put it down. That's an insane request to ask of any human being. Or when they say on the TV, just to eat right. That is of zero value to me. You're an idiot. Meanwhile, ask them what they're eating as they're handing out that stupid advice. And the other good news I have for you is you don't have to be perfect about this. I'm going to give you some really good news here. Average American, they say, eats 60% ultra-processed food every day. Some children eat 80%. Frozen pizza. The little gummy things they're chewing in the afternoon. Things they're getting at school. They had school cafeteria pizza at the hospital the other day, and my boss was eating it. Hey, it's school pizza. I was like, oh, there's no nutritional value in that, brother. Who knows what that's made out of? Because I don't know the industrial company that supplies the hospital food, but I guarantee it's not natural and real and organic. So again, if we're eating this stuff, you don't have to be perfect. It literally, if you could cut 10% and just be 50% ultra processed, that puts you ahead of the rest of the people in the United States. If you can cut 20%, my sister, who's fairly healthy and she's a wellness nurse, she loves the 80-20 rule. That's what she follows. She loves to follow 80% I eat right, 20% I let myself splurge and have some regular crazy foods. So that's fine. I will make it even easier than that. The best advice is I went down this rabbit hole, and it can be so overwhelming that I heard to keep it simple. Cut out sugar as much as you can. Cut out the fake oils, so don't use those vegetables and stuff, and I'll give you some ideas. And get more fiber in your diet. That guy, he said if you do that alone, you'll be fine. All of your metabolic illness, diabetes, Alzheimer's, heart disease, that's all part of metabolic illness now as we understand it. Your body's out of whack. All that will be fixed and you'll be fine if you can do those three things. Cut back as much as you can of sugar, cut out the fake oils, and get more fiber in your diet. Now, fake oils, I'm happy to say there's a lot of healthy products out there that, you can find with avocado oil in it, and it's hard to train yourself. I love mayonnaise. If you're from the South, mayonnaise is as second nature as being Southern. And more mayonnaise, the better. And, people make fun of the British because they eat mayo with their fries. I understand that, although I mix a little ketchup with the mayo. That takes it to the next level. But if you look at your mayo, it's canola oil. It's soybean oil. It's fake. It's not real. They'll say, oh, eggs and other things. Yeah, and then there's the oil. Thank God they make mayonnaise with avocado. But it is a little bit of a challenge to get your taste buds more. And now I'm starting to lean more towards the healthy oils. There's spaghetti sauces that have avocado oil in it. Primal Kitchen is one of the best brands out there for health and organic stuff. Yes, organic food is more expensive, and that's another issue we're having in our culture. There's a lot of people can't afford anything but the crappy food, especially if you're on food stamps. But the problem is you're investing in you. You're investing in your future and in your health. And if I could just show you a picture and let you spend some time to talk to my friend Darren, his body is giving out. And the hospital is sending him home today because there's nothing else they can do, but he does not need to leave the hospital. He's not going home. He's going to his nursing home. That's his home now. He's been there for 4.5 years. I'm telling you, we're all going to be trapped in this system, and we're all going to end up with these diseases. And right now they're predicting that Medicare and Medicaid will not be able to sustain the amount of ill health that is headed to impact our country. But I'm encouraging you, like every other piece of recovery, I can't control the world, I can't control the government, but I can control me. And I can do that by learning new tools. That is empowering. Knowledge is empowering. Go on that journey on YouTube. Start looking up about ultra-processed foods. Look up about alternatives. Look about what could work for you. It's not about perfection. It's about little changes, little improvements. Those make the biggest difference in the world. I've tried in my recovery to change everything overnight so many times it doesn't work. That New Year's resolution, tomorrow I'm going to the gym every day, I'm going to eat perfect, doesn't work. You know what works for me? I ate crappy over the weekend, so I'm trying to eat clean today. And I do that, and it works out. It gets better. And you're slowly training your brain on these new patterns of eating. It's a deeply intimate, deeply personal issue. If I could take a minute to just wrap up and talk about the extremes of diet that so many of my friends have struggled with. Our poor ladies, because of our culture and this crazy idea of the perfect female form that doesn't exist in magazines, starving themselves to death, purging, binging, bulimia, anorexia. Men suffer from that just as much. But it's this idea that it's a love-hate relationship with food. And that's the one thing you want to try and avoid when you're trying to make these changes in your life. You don't want to be so strict that it feels taboo to buy a bag of Cheetos. You don't want to feel that way. And you don't want to wrap yourself with people around you who will judge you like that. Don't do that. Those people, let them do their own thing. If they're able to eat perfectly, my hat's off to you. Some of these people I listen to, I'm like, I don't know how you can eat like that. I can't do that. I want to be able to enjoy my life a little bit more than that. That's fine. So if it takes off 1 year of my life versus 10 years, that's still improvement. But surround yourself with people who are supportive and who really encourage you and can relate to what you're going through. Last thing you want to have when you have extreme eating disorders is somebody judge you or say you're weird or what's wrong with you. And by the way, if anybody out there has a child that's suffering from anorexia, worst thing you can do is yell at them about it. I've got a relative right now that for a while was putting a lot of emphasis on what their daughter was eating. And doing it in restaurants and doing it in front of other people. You need to eat more. You need to get some more. You didn't eat enough. You need to go back and get more. And I was like, oh, you're doing the worst thing. You're shaming them. You're shaming and guilting them. As I told you, food is very intimate. It's just as intimate as sex. It really is. So we have to treat it with tenderness and with compassion and with support. And that's my main message to you as you go on this journey. First, A, do it for yourself. Arm yourself with the facts, and be very gentle with yourself. I find that works better than anything else. I've had slips, I've made mistakes, but I'm on a path. And I keep telling my doctor, you're not going to put me on those damn statins. You're not going to put me on those damn anti-diabetes medicines, whatever it is. Because once you get to a certain age, your numbers are going to creep up. You can't get away with what you used to get away with as a youth. And I've also discovered they were right. It's a lot harder to lose weight as you're older than it is when you're younger. Like crazy hard. I mean, you can even eat right and still not lose weight. I don't know what's going on. But your metabolism changes or you just get older. So be gentle with yourself. Go on the journey one day at a time. Celebrate your successes. And any further questions, please submit them to our podcast. We're at iam12recovery@gmail.com. iam12recovery@gmail. And when you start talking to your friends, don't be surprised that most of them have never heard about this. Your own doctor will not have heard about this. Let me put in one other word about how doctors are not taught about this. I listen to doctors who will teach on this topic, and they say they got about an hour of nutrition class in their entire training. In fact, they'll say, we're not trained to be nutritionists. And yet that's the most important thing they should be talking about to their patients. I meet my fellow therapists who are dealing with anxiety and depression and bipolar, and they're not talking to their patients about what they're eating. It's like it's almost taboo, like we can't discuss it. So we went through a whole phase in the 1950s. There was a guy named Ansel Adams, might have been late 40s into the 50s. He put out some bogus statistics and scientific proof, which was not real, because he twisted the findings to say that saturated fats in like butter and meat were what causing heart disease. So I was also a part of this experiment. If you will notice, in the 80s, all of a sudden we had low-fat everything, and into the 90s, zero-fat everything. And what did they have to do with that processed food to make it palatable? They had to put in fake fats, which was chemicals, and they had to put in sugars, and they had to put in all the other oils to make it tasty. And so we've been eating this fake food, and we've come to find out, A, eggs are no longer taboo. Eggs are one of the best, most nutritional foods you can eat. B, meat that's natural and organic especially that hasn't been processed in terrible farms but has been treated humanely is actually one of the best sources of protein you can eat. If you're a vegetarian, that's fine. But I'm just letting you know, meat will not hurt you. Even bacon without nitrates. It's the nitrates that's bad in it, but otherwise it's meat. This is food we've been eating for hundreds of thousands of years. And this one person, I might have his name wrong, but I think it's Ansel Adams, said, oh, well, this is what you need to watch out for because Truman had a heart attack and he's eating too much butter, so it's saturated fat in the diet. No, you know what it is now? Sugar. Sugar drives heart disease. Carbohydrates, sugar from carbohydrates, which there's rice and sugar and cereals. If it's not a complex carbohydrate with fiber, you're just getting it turned into pure sugar in your body, and you're thinking you're eating right. You can buy spaghetti noodles, which actually have that durum wheat in it, and it'll have like 26% fiber in one serving. So you're counteracting the amount of fiber you have in the diet counteracts the sugar effect. But again, we're being sold this stuff, and you'll go to your doctor today and he'll tell you, well, your cholesterol's high, so you either need to be put on a statin or you need to stop eating meat. And they're wrong.
Ansel Keys.
Ansel Keys, thank you. Ansel Adams. I think that was an artist. That was a photographer, actually, and Adams was. But they don't have this information. Your own doctor doesn't know about this. And tread lightly when you're talking to them because they'll give you that look like you don't know what you're talking about because you're a stupid patient. But they weren't trained on it. And most doctors, they don't have time for research. They listen to the people selling the drugs. That's how everybody makes money is they sell the drugs, and then our stocks go up and our 401k go up. And, there's other ways.
And they suffer from the not being seen as wrong thing we talked about before, too.
Yes. So when you're looking think about, can I recognize where the food comes from? Does it look natural? Did it grow on a tree? Did it go on a plant, in the ground? Was it a part of an animal that was walking around? You'll be fine. And my brother actually has a bit of a self-sustaining farm out there where he has his own egg source. He has his own meat source for bacon and stuff, grown their own vegetables. Boy, if you can do that, you're really outside the grid and you're really eating well. But just start with the processed, ultra-processed foods. Just get those out as much and notice how hard that is and be gentle to yourself. So as an objective person who I know I've shared some of this with you over the years, Dan, let's get into our discussion period because I'd be curious to hear someone else's journey with trying to understand and wrap their head around this.
My first reaction to it is to reject it, and it's come along. But, I had an experiment in my life where I dated a girl who was in Overeaters Anonymous and had a lot of the nutrition kind of education that she found herself. She dug it up on her own and got me to thinking about a lot of this. And there was that period back in pre-COVID, and I know that can't throw it at that thing, but COVID kind of derailed me in both my yoga and my nutrition.
Me too, brother.
And
it happened to a lot of us.
Yeah, and but prior to that, I was as healthy and as eating as good. I was counting my macros on an app in my phone. Was staying away like the label thing. If you didn't, the real easy way it was explained to me is if you don't know what that is, because it's mono something another and citrus, all this kind of stuff, and when like eggs, milk, wheat, the straight up in oats, the straight up ingredients.
Cheese is actually a great food source.
Real cheese.
The French eat it all the time.
Real
and
cheese.
They're not fat.
Not Velveeta.
No, not a
that
product.
falls into that process thing. So you could get tricked pretty easy like that. But
it's not called cheese, by the way. It's called cheese processed product. It has its own term.
It's got another term. It certainly does. But I felt better than I had ever felt maybe in my life, and it just come down to a simple thing of like what kind of fuel was I putting in me, and I'm blessed with it. I don't have any food issues. That's another thing that kind of from our training and this kind of stuff. I think about like people who everything was put down on the plate in front of me, and I really never thought I had a choice about what I was going to eat. And the words that never were used around the table was, I don't like this. So I really like everything, and I like tasty food just like the next person. But I also just really, I know it's fuel. I feel it today. If I don't, it's almost like I got diabetes, but I don't. But when my fuel tank starts going down on a job, I start feeling sluggish and stuff, and I can grab something. And if I'm good about it, which normally I am today, I will have something healthy to eat. So I can eat an apple, banana, do something where I'm not, grabbing a bag of Doritos or something like that. And get
nuts is a
nuts.
Great
I
source
do. I carry nuts with me a lot. I'll have bags of nuts. Try to watch the salt content on those.
Yeah, but still, it's better.
But
than
still,
eating chips.
but I still try to watch and kind of double dip in that area. And my fuel tank will come back up, and I'll be back to productivity like I should be. I'm in touch with that pretty well.
For us guys, I heard a guy put it this way: us guys will be more careful about the oil we're putting in our car, rather than the food we're putting in our body.
Yep, and that whole thing about that being misled about some of these foods is taking a while to get washed out. I have a cousin too who is a big time. About what, she is seriously concerned about her longevity. And you can tell it. You look at her, man, and when I go, she comes down to the cabin and hunts with me, she's on it, the food that's there. But, she still will have a few Mountain Dews with her, So, I mean, it's not that, like you said, you don't have to be a strict kind, it doesn't have to be 110%, making some improvement. And I'll tell you, man, wasn't long ago, I was hungry and I was at the Home Depot, and that's not the place to be shopping for food. But I needed something, and I grabbed that bag of Doritos, man. And, the bag of Doritos is that snack size, whatever, medium. And I took them out to the truck, and I opened them up, and they didn't taste good to me. There was something about it, and I don't know if it's just like you're saying, kind of like with the smoking thing, as I'm beginning to be educated and I'm just eating the normal stuff. I was like, man, those are not as good as I remembered them being. And and I didn't finish the bag. Ate a few and tossed them at the next stop. But, I love sugar. Everybody does. I love my ice cream. I love, that's really my big one today, man. I can't drive by Dairy Queen without getting an ice cream cone. And sugary drinks. But I'm looking at them, and like this stuff that I'm drinking now has sugar in it.
Right.
And that's there when you're talking about those kinds of sugars.
Right.
Some of them sugars is not. Can't they got the toses in them, right? That the OSE in there of these kinds of sugars that you're getting that you don't even know what you're getting.
Fructose, glucose, all that. But the thing I meant to say earlier about that, if there's one change anybody could make in their life today that's more impactful than anything else, is look for high fructose corn syrup.
Yep.
What I've been taught about that is that it's a chemical-induced sugar that the liver does not know how to process. The liver will see it coming, and it will freak out, and it will immediately store it into fat because it'll leave it for later to figure out what to do with it.
Real good point.
Sugar and fruit and all that kind of sugar source, it knows how to process that. But high fructose corn syrup is in so many products that we eat that are desserts and especially sodas. That's been one area of my life that I've been able to, unless it's a treat every once in a while, I've just been able to drop it because I just been so worried about that word. Now, here's where you play the tricks with it. You go to the grocery store, look at pancake syrup. Who doesn't like syrup on their pancakes or waffles? I like that on a Sunday morning, no problem. But I buy Log Cabin because it says on the top, no high fructose corn syrup, and it's just regular sugar.
And most syrup is all high fructose
and regular sugar.
syrup.
Regular sugar is much better for you than this other. So just those little changes, folks. Now with ice cream, I mean, I'm on a hunt. I'll be looking through the whole damn section. I'll go through the whole freezer section. I'll make people wait while I'm looking at products trying to figure out what's real. Unfortunately, one of the realest ones is Haagen-Dazs, and it's usually low with so much fat. It's like this little pint, 264% of your saturated fat. It's like, well, thank you very much. That's 3 days of my fat. Who's going to eat less than a pint? But I just found Breyers, they've changed. I used to watch them. They had high fructose, and they're not advertised on the package. It just says 3 ingredients, cream, sugar, milk, and that's it.
Yeah.
But every other one, like the store-bought, not to throw them out, Kroger's or any store you go to, the store-bought brands is all like, it's not even ice cream. There's barely cream in there. It's all just, but Haagen-Dazs, it's usually Haagen-Dazs, it's got a lot of flavors in it. It's really the top, just natural food.
That kind of goes along, another journey was when my son was diagnosed with peanut allergy and we started reading labels. It had nothing to do with eating healthy. It had to do with not killing our son. And the generic store brands, they won't have like the ingredient stuff. They have the warning label on everything, where you have to buy the name brand to get one that says doesn't have that. You're looking for cookies. The Chips Ahoy will say what it really has in it, and the Kroger brand will say may contain. They don't want the quality. They're not paying. One of the things that it makes it cheaper is they're not paying for the quality control. And it does tend to seem to be that the store brands are you're skirting the edge on store brands.
And now check this out. There's also a tricky way if you like your sweets. If you go home and you make a cake from scratch with butter and sugar and natural products, it doesn't have what your store cake has. You buy that store cake and it's got so many fake fats and shortening.
And the one thing you didn't say was the preservatives that they put in stuff to give it the shelf life today.
That's right. That was a key. You're right. The preservatives so that it won't go bad on the shelf was a big part of that. Yep. Absolutely.
That's why you can bring that cake home from Kroger's and it'll last 2 weeks if you don't eat it.
Surprisingly,
but if you make one, they don't keep their stuff quite as long. Mm-hmm. But you're better off. And you know what? I guess again to go back to that one thing, it's eating real food.
Right.
Real food, not because believe it or not, Twinkies are not real food.
There's not anything real in a Twinkie.
Yeah, nothing. I mean, that's my favorite
I'm
example.
To say I was more of a Zinger guy, but I haven't bought Zingers in over a year. It was really easy for me, too, actually, to let go of fast food for the most part. Now, as a treat, I mean, I don't mind the Subway sandwich every now and then. I'll just get the sandwich, not the chips, Yep. But McDonald's, I hadn't been there in over a year. And for some reason, after the eclipse, I was hungry. We hadn't anything to eat really except little snacks and nuts out there. So I said, I'm just going to get some, see how bad it is. I ate it and I was like, it just did not taste the same way. I've weaned myself off that to even desire it. Yeah,
they're probably, there was that movie, that show about the McDonald's guy, didn't he? The guy just died, didn't he?
Super Size Me. Yeah, he did.
And he ate all, but McDonald's, they kind of, it's mainstream knowledge that their food is not really food. Mm-hmm. They don't have anything in there that's food.
Mm-hmm. And we're up against, if you have children, man, you are up against a hard fight because they're advertised at school, even if you don't let them watch TV, on the internet. Pop-ups, all that stuff is eat Captain Crunch, do this, blah, blah, blah. And by the way, there's so many products that we eat in America that other countries will refuse to sell. Mm-hmm. Captain Crunch, Frosted Flakes, I could just go on and on if you look it up. England, France, these other places don't allow it because they don't consider it food.
Yep, and then even some of them, they've got warning labels on them like cigarettes. If they do sell them, they've got a big band on them that says, warns you the dangers of eating that product.
Yeah, but in our country they go, that's over-regulation. We don't need any regulations. Let's just let corporations do whatever they want. That's a great idea.
Yeah, I saw one guy, and it might have been, I don't know if it was a link that you sent me or not, but like they had a traffic light thing on it, like red,
that's in England,
yellow, and green to give you an instant feedback about where that is on things. Mm-hmm. You can buy red if you want to, but know that you're buying stuff that says, stop, don't eat this.
So, like even with bread, try to go with something that's organic. I can highly recommend Dave's Organic Bread. Every ingredient is organic, and it's not that expensive. And it's got great fiber. And like I said, fiber counteracts the sugar effect. And it's all natural, good products. I mean, you can read the ingredient label. There's not a fake ingredient in there. Thank God. When I find something new in the store, like I found these cookies you can bake yourself, and it was from a woman named Angie's Kitchen, I think it's called. And it was like, she says, I believe in eating clean. I want to pass this on to my kids. And the product is everything in there is as wholesome and real and butter and just regular foods. And, unfortunately, you got to sometimes go to a Whole Foods, but even a Whole Foods or a Trader Joe's, the amount of food they have in there that's fake, same deal. I mean, it's everywhere. Everywhere. And they're pushing it on us, when you're at the stoplight and you suddenly get a cravings for a McDonald's fry, It's well known that they pound that smell out when they're cooking, and they know that in traffic it'll go up your air conditioning system, come into your car, and you'll be like, I just want to get some fries.
Right turn.
So try the journey. Be aware. The results, if you don't, can be catastrophic. I can't overemphasize that enough. I've seen too many videos where people have stopped eating the crap and changed their lives to eat better, and their health problems disappeared. They live longer. They're happier. Their mood is improved. They claim they have more energy. And as long as we're on that topic, I'm not going to get deep in it today, but I want to throw a shout out for fasting. Fasting is now being the number one scientifically studied way to cleanse your system and give it a reboot. Anything you can do, whether it's intermittent fasting, which means you eat within a certain window, whether it's 8 hours or 10 hours. I tend to eat almost every day within an 8 or 10 hour limit, and then the rest of the day I don't. I only eat 2 meals a day anyway. I don't really dig breakfast. I just have some coffee. Everybody has their own fit, though, about what works for you. But 24-hour fasts, if you want to try that at first, I wouldn't recommend doing a real hardcore one at first, because if you have health issues, you want to make sure you're safe. But what it does is it resets your body, has a chance to unload the cells that are bad and being damaged. As cells are damaged by these foods, they cause cancer, folks. We're talking about real shit. And so when you fast, your body has a chance to cleanse you of these cells that could possibly lead to cancer. Another thing they're discovering is how much cancer feeds on sugar. And they are encouraging people when they're doing chemo now to eat foods that are good for you, that are healthy and whole, like we're talking about today. And people are having much better outcomes with their chemo treatments. So if you'll start looking for this, you can find this information, but they're not going to tell you this on the news because the news is sponsored by Captain Crunch or whoever is sponsoring the news. So there's going to be a conflict of interest to tell you not to eat their foods. Give us your feedback. Send us information about your journey with that. Again, our email address is iam12recovery@gmail.com. And it's a deep and wide topic. And when I first got into it, I was like, oh, it's too much. I can't do it. Just like Dan was saying, I want to reject it, blah, blah, blah. You don't have to change overnight. Awareness is everything. I'll finish with this. In psychotherapy, most of what's happening in the human mind throughout our entire day is done on a subconscious level. You believe you're operating, but like I said in the last podcast on meditation, how we're asleep and we're not in our present moment. Most of the time, we're in this dream world of thinking about something else. So we're going through an automatic pilot. If you're brushing your teeth, you're putting your clothes on, you're going to work, opening up your desk, all that stuff you've done so many times, you don't have to think to do it. Even driving your car, you're on automatic pilot. So when you're making food choices, most of the time we're on automatic pilot, right? But what we do in psychotherapy is we try to bring these things from the subconscious to your cortex. And just by watching this video, this is now firmly in the front of your mind, which is your decision-making process. And your cortex, the next time you go to the store and you pick up that bag of whatever and you're looking at it going, should I or shouldn't I? At least you will remember some of this information and possibly make a better decision. And again, celebrate every great victory you have with just little decisions, because it's hard to change this lifelong bad habits we have. I'm going to make a vow that I don't want to end up like my good friend Darren, but God bless him. I struggle just as much as he does, and most of my friends do too. You can't change overnight. It's not natural for human beings to be able to change overnight. So I hope this was so helpful to you. I care about you and your future and your health and your well-being, and that's what this podcast is all about. So thanks for being with us for the topic today. All right, now is the portion of the program where we like to answer your questions. So please send them in, and we will help you with whatever issue you are currently dealing with in your life's journey. I have two great questions today. One is, start with the first one. It says, I'm an addict that was on Adderall and Xanax for years. Wow, my heart goes out to you. That is a roller coaster. I'm up, I'm down, I'm up, and trying to manage those two things together. That's one thing I've never understood about people that did speedballs. Speedballs is doing amphetamine with heroin and trying to manage that right mix of getting that. I don't know. I just don't know how you do that. It feels like you're going sideways. So I'm an addict too that was on Adderall and Xanax for years. I have been off of these medications for almost a year now. Congratulations. Fantastic. Almost your first year. I find myself getting anxious at times for no apparent reason, and I end up needing my newly prescribed medication for anxiety, which is non-habit forming, of course. This is frustrating, though, because I feel like I can't control the anxiety at times, no matter what I try to do. Can you please go into detail about PAWS, P-A-W-S, explain that in a second, and what that potentially looks for addicts and alcoholics and what the current research is? Would also love an episode on this topic if possible. Thank you very much. Well, you're in great luck. Your letter couldn't come in a perfect time. Our very next episode, which I think will be number 11, is going to be on PAWS, which stands for Post-Acute Withdrawal Syndrome. This is what every person who's been on chemicals, and I believe every person that's been on food addiction or sex addiction or gambling, whatever, you're going to go through this process where your brain, heart, soul, body is going to be adjusting to the new you. And it's a very difficult process. It causes all kinds of emotional upheaval. We have a joke in the program. The good news is you get your feelings back. Bad news, you get your feelings back. That is part of PAWS. So what we're talking about, and we'll explain on the next episode, is we have acute withdrawals where somebody needs to be in a hospital because they might pass out or have a seizure or they're shaking or they get chills or heat or whatever, sweats. And then that fades within a week. And then to go into this post-acute, which can last up to a year, up to 2 years, depending on the chemicals you used. Now, what we know specifically in your case, and I want to address this for today, and then we'll save the rest for the next episode, is that when you're on amphetamines of any kind, and my old sponsor, Dr. Burns Brady, who was a medical doctor, would call Adderall and Stratira and what's the other one, Ritalin, he would call that legalized meth. That was his opinion on legalized meth. Now, it's a little bit different than meth. It's not made in a basement. You know what the ingredients are in it versus, what's being made in somebody's backyard. But the point being is that what it does to the brain is it stretches its limits to a place that it takes longer for the brain to recover and sort of get back to normal. So the best analogy that I'll talk about next week is this idea of a rubber band, and the brain likes homeostasis. And every time you use any kind of chemical, you're stretching yourself either way up or way down. And you get to a place where you can stretch that to its ultimate limits, and you're going to get problems, particularly with amphetamines, such as psychotic breaks. And they're very scary. It's a break from reality. Sometimes people come back. Sometimes they don't come back. But that damage done to the brain, and I'm going to imagine since you were using both that and the Xanax to rubber band yourself the other way, and the extremity with which we use chemicals as addicts, let's be honest about that. It's not like we're using one or two. We are using what it takes. I'm going to guess that cycle has set you up for a little bit of a harder recovery in your post-acute phase. And I want to give you some tools for that, but let me just... First of all, it's not easy for anybody to deal with their feelings coming back, and how do I interact in social situations, and how do I deal with life and normal things like going to work on time and getting up for work. All that stuff is new to us in early recovery. And then you add the effects of the brain on top of that, which I'll detail again in the next episode. But with your particular mix, I just think it's going to be a little bit harder for you in the long run. So I'm telling you that not to discourage you. I'm telling you that to actually empower you so you know that it will pass. But it's going to be a little different than other people's experience. Because if I don't tell you that, you're going to go along, you're going to think, well, am I weird? Is this never going to get fixed? Have I broken myself? No, I don't think so. I think you just use some really high-tech chemicals that are legal, and they will prescribe them for you. But they're very dangerous. I mean, a lot of our kids are using Ritalin and Adderall to stay up and study for school. And they consider it a very benign, safe drug. It's not. It's legalized meth. So I just feel like because of your drug history use, you're going to have a little bit of a harder time for it in the long run, but it will eventually pass and it will eventually get better. Now, this had me an anxiety out of nowhere. I can relate to this in my early recovery because I had depression out of nowhere. I mean, I would go into these funks where I was fine 1 minute in my recovery, happy to be sober, coming home from my meeting, so, everything's good. And I would walk across the street and just be like, screw everybody, and I just want to die and kill everybody and screw this world. I mean, I would go down. I would go dark. And I was like, what is this? Now, when I was using it, I used to enjoy being dark. So I know I had encouraged a lot of that habitually in my emotionals. There is a whole school of thought about whether emotions can be addictive. You get into a state of anxiety or depression for too long, and your body begins to confuse that with normal. So maybe anxiety has been fooled in your brain that you think it's a normal state. But this idea of it coming out of nowhere is real common. It's part of the bouncing around in your early recovery. The tools, first of all, talking to others. I'm going to say that time and time again in this program. I know all of us will say, yeah, I know that, and then we're not doing it, right? Because we don't want to call our sponsor and bother them. Or we think it's stupid because I've called her 1,000 times on this and she doesn't want me to call her 1,001, which is wrong. Of course they do. So talking about it, please keep bringing it up. Please keep talking about it. And invariably, there's someone else in your group who's going through the same exact thing, and you being brave enough to bring it up is going to encourage them to talk about their own story and help them get well too. So that's being of service. Number 2, we talked about meditation last episode. If you're not doing that, you're going to have anxiety. That is the one way to take that back and get some control over your breath. Now, when you're actually having a panic attack type situation or an anxiety attack that's severe, it's really hard to get a hold of your breath. I get that. You'll be in this activated state where you just can't calm down. When we talked about the tools for PTSD, and I used to tell the soldiers to hold ice in their hands to distract their brain. And at the same time, maybe you're rubbing your bare feet on your carpet saying, I'm safe, I'm safe, I'm safe. My dear sponsor, Dr. Burns Brady, was an amphetamine addict and alcoholic, but he was worse as an amphetamine addict in his early days. And in his earliest recovery, this was normal for him. He would see a patient, go back to his office, fall on the floor in a fetal position and wail, crying. And his partner would come in and build him back up, or he would call his sponsor and build him back up to go see his next patient because of amphetamines. So it's a killer drug. But this breathing, try to be aware of your breath, try to use distraction tools, self-soothing tools. Rocking is what he used to do. He used to actually say, God is love. That was what worked for him. The mantra was, God is love, God is love. And he would rock. And he said that worked to settle him down. Don't be embarrassed by any of that. My sponsor told me to get a stuffed animal when I was working on my inner child stuff. So I got a little big gorilla that I liked. And just hold that and calm yourself. If you have a pet, use that to calm yourself. That naturally lowers heart rate and blood pressure. And stay away from environmental cues that you find out tend to trigger your anxiety. It's real important that you begin to identify who and what I'm around that tends to cause me to feel more anxious. And if it's a partner, somebody in your life that you as a friend, I don't know. Maybe you might need to set some boundaries and set some limits that maybe I don't need to be around those people right now while I'm recovering. It's a hell of a thing. I'm not sugarcoating it in any way, shape, or form. Early recovery is the hardest thing any human being is ever going to do on earth. I don't care if you're recovering from food addiction or anything we talk about in this program. But it's brave. It's courageous. It's noble. You're going against the grain of what most other people are just giving up and just giving into out there. So find your supports. Build your army around you and breathe. That does control a lot of our anxiety response if you just practice it and train your brain on it a little bit. So, great question, though, and I appreciate you bringing it up. Hang on for our next podcast. I promise I'll go more in depth. I just don't want to tip our hand and tell everybody everything tonight. So, thank you for that question.
And it's a big, big topic.
It's a big, big topic. You had your own stuff with early recovery. I'm sure that was just like, am I going crazy?
Yep, I think it's normal, and we have this piece of us that wants to, wants to be better faster, right? And it just doesn't work that way.
Or we compare ourselves with other people getting better faster.
Yeah. And like you said, you think, am I going crazy? Maybe I'm broke. I went over the edge and I'm not going to make it back. One of the lines I like, it's a guy said, if you walk 50 miles into the woods, you're going to have to walk 50 miles back out. And I don't think recovery is actually that bad. But the analogy, we got pretty deep into the woods, and I think you get more miles per gallon getting back out, but you're going to have a adjustment period. You're going basically at some level like being in an automobile accident and having to learn to walk again. Mm-hmm. You can get there, and we have to learn to live again, chemical free, and like we talked about before, that neuroplasticity. that neuroplasticity will come into play in doing things like you said. I don't know, my heart tells me that you really would really want to be working on a meditation practice, not just using it a little bit. Maybe push a little, maybe use that tool a little bit more in order to help rewire that stuff that's in there, because meditation will do that. And, and you can't OD on meditation. And, it's probably, because it's just going to be time, awareness, communication, keeping in touch, and doing things that will counteract that. Meditation will do it.
And I love when you share, because it clicks my brain on the things that I wasn't able to bring up. So 2 aspects of that. One is, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, Dan, people who use prescription medications have this weird idea, well, it's prescribed, so it's safe. Well, it's prescribed. It's not as bad as if buying meth on the street. You're wrong. Just because it's legalized and from a corporation doesn't mean it's just as bad to your body.
We were talking about earlier.
Right.
That food's legal too, but it doesn't mean it's good for you.
Good point. The other thing that I think people do is they fight the natural impulse to want to use. And I don't think that's productive. I think it's actually easier if you start to accept, wait a minute, I'm an addict. Of course I want to have a pill. Of course I want something to fix this right away. And you talk to your sponsor about it. When we fight it, say, oh, bad dog, you're not supposed to want drugs. It's wrong. It's immoral.
You gotta pretend like everything's okay.
What's wrong with you? And if you tell your family, God forbid, don't, in early recovery, that you want to use.
Yeah, because they're
going to beat you up with, what are you, stupid? That just destroyed your whole life. Why would you do that? It's like, well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Why are you eating that damn ice cream? Shut the fuck up. Seriously, I throw that stuff back at them all the time. You're not going to judge me. But among fellow addicts, we'll tell you that's normal. You're an addict. I have gotten to a place of acceptance, which I believe is the ultimate of recovery. We're not only accepting your addiction, but also accepting your flaws and mistakes. I talk about the food and being on the journey. I make mistakes all the time, but I don't beat myself up anymore, and I really used to. But being able to accept and say, of course I want to use, I'm a freaking addict. And I'll start laughing at that point. I'll look at the liquor store. I don't even want to drink. I didn't even really like alcohol, but it's there. And I'm like, oh, look at that. And I'll be like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And I'll start laughing. And that's how little it's become versus this huge monster which used to own me. And when it said use, I had to obey.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So stop fighting so much as learning that, oh, that's natural. And talk to other addicts, and they'll say, yeah, of course you want to use. We all want to use. We don't now in recovery because we found something better, but having that impulse when we're in pain,
but like you said,
or when we hurt, that is the natural human condition. You're looking for something to fix it.
Yep. I'm not okay. I want what I've done all my life to change not being okay.
And the lesser of evils, if you go and get that quart of bad ice cream, instead of using your drugs, you're still winning.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
You are.
Yep. Heck yeah. You are.
I tell all my patients, you're going to gain weight in early recovery. Don't worry about it. And especially if you quit smoking. Great. You're still not killing yourself with alcohol and drugs. So one thing at a time, one step at a time. It's all part of a process and learning to love ourselves. And I agree with Dan 100%. I think people blow off meditation and don't invest as much as they really should for the amount of payoff you could possibly get out of that.
For something completely free.
Changes your entire physiology.
Yep.
It has me. I used to be a pretty hyped up guy back in the day. Even when I first met you, I was more hyped up than I am now.
Yep. And you talk about the brain science and all that and the scans. They know this. This is, we thought meditation was good for you a long time ago, but now they actually hook up and scan and they can actually see what's happening and when you're meditating.
Mm-hmm.
It's proven.
Great stuff.
It's not a theory.
Great stuff. So thank you for the question and any feedback, or let us know how you're doing, but stay tuned for the next episode. And I promise we will address that 100%, give you all the science you want.
So I got a question.
Oh, Dan the Man has a question. This is a special occasion, guys.
And it's kind of funny because sometimes when I say I feel like I don't want to be seen as bragging or blowing off, and this is one of them questions that will make me stop from doing it because of that. But I am fortunate enough to have a shit ton of sponsees. And I actually have been coming to the point lately to where I hesitate in thinking about helping somebody new because of the time sink is happening in my life. I got over a dozen of them active and sober now. And, I hear one of them says, if you don't call your sponsor every day, you ain't got a sponsor. I don't know. I don't agree with that necessarily. I get the point. And early recovery for sure. When a guy's a few years down the road, I'm not sure, but me and you pretty much communicate daily.
Sure.
Still 10 years later.
We want to.
Yeah. And it's not that I don't want to with these people either. It's not that at all. But, managing that and what really, I know my bread is buttered on the side of helping a new guy. If I was going to suggest a guy move on and find a new teacher or something like that, which I don't really want to tell a guy that, not for good reasons, I can let a guy go if he's not doing the work. But, and you build these relationships with these guys, man. These guys are all my best friends, right? But I'm having trouble managing it, and I'm having, thoughts about that deal on whether if I should not raise my hand on Tuesday nights until somebody, chances are, the stats would say somebody will drop off. I don't want them to, but what are your thoughts on handling that?
That's an excellent question. I appreciate that a lot.
It's a great problem to have.
Sure. It's a blessing. So 2 things occurred to me from my experience. One is I think we go through seasons of our sobriety. And there's some seasons where we're more productive, like we are in the spring and summer. And then in the fall and winter, we're reaping our harvest, And you have certainly put forth your work with a lot of people. So putting a pause on it for a minute and just collecting your breath, absolutely nothing wrong with that. You've already put a lot of money in the bank with the universe. I heard Cat Williams talking about this in a short video I played for my group where he said, I've learned that the universe has a banking system. And I've learned that if I put my deposits in, I'm able to withdraw when I need it. And then it popped up, said he was worth $50 million. Yeah. So we forget about that. We find times we take and then times we give back. And so I really believe in that seasons of my sobriety journey. If you need to take a little vacation or break off it, I don't think there's anything wrong with that whatsoever. I will tell you the other thing I think about the most is I want somebody who's going to bring something to my journey. And this is something I explain to my sponsees right off the bat because they're selfish and self-centered just like I was. They think it's all about them. Like, I don't know if you can sponsor me, and I don't know if I want to pick you. And it's like, motherfucker, at this stage, this ain't about you. This is about me deciding I want to work with you because you are going to give me the juice of doing the freaking work and showing me that this miracle works. That is the only thing that makes me believe there's a higher power. Seriously, I can't find it on TV. I can't find it in my coworkers at work, but I find it in that guy's eyes when his lights come on and his soul changes as his entire life transforms from a tragedy into this miracle life. And I go, where and how does that happen? There has got to be a greater power that exists that is possible of doing these miracles. We see that every day. So if my guy is not doing his work and he's not going to bring me that juice, he's got to go. You are dragging me down, and that seed is too valuable. And every single one of my guys, if you're out there right now and you're struggling with sponsoring somebody, you may need to fire their ass. And that is allowed in the program. And then you're probably doing them a damn favor. By signing off on their BS and allowing them to die, you are not helping them. But I will tell you one thing my teacher, Scott Lee, taught me. He says, I'm never going to let somebody go without letting them know you have not done the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And then he'll explain, I'm not telling them that to hurt them. I'm telling them that to save their damn life. Because when they crash and burn again and they end up in a jail cell in a pile of their own vomit, blood, and piss, and they're like waking up going, I got no other hope. I did the steps. I did it. It didn't work. Then they're going to go jump off a bridge and kill themselves or eat a bullet. And you are doing them a damn favor to let them know you did not do the work so that he still has an option. Something he has not tried. So I am fierce on this because I have sponsees come to me all the time and they're complaining about this guy's dragging me down. His energy he's not, I'm fighting him to do the work. I said, you need to fire his ass. I can't do that. I feel like I'm letting him down. I get it, man, but it's not helping you. This is a two-way street. You have got to get juice from your sponsee. So my personal decision right now is I want to work with people that want to go deeper level recovery. I can't, first of all, because of my job. I'm dealing with newcomers all day, so I'm certainly doing my newcomer work. But I want people that are going to bring me that validation about the way we do it in that deeper level recovery that we have found with these tools like forgiveness that you were talking about in step 8. We'll do a whole episode on that. Most people don't even know anything about it. It's not in the big book. We have learned so much in 87 years or plus 88, however long it's been now, of recovery. 89, 24, I guess.
Well, that was 39 was when the book.
I know, but I go from Bill's birthday, from Bill's sobriety date. Because that was the journey of beginning to learn about it. He was formulating the book as he was doing the meetings, you know. My God, have we learned so much. So anybody you meet that says anything you need to know is in the first 164, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. Bob Earl's response to that, my favorite response in the world, well, if I'm having surgery, I hope to God my doctor has read a medical book since 1935.
Bob Earl was also on something else that I forgot to mention. He was talking back in the early 70s about being addicted to grease and salt.
And sugar, yep. He said, you go in these meetings, these guys got their coffee and there's cookies lined up and they're all angry.
Yep.
That's a great speaker, folks. Bob Earl, E-A-R-L-L, God rest his soul. He was a warrior for health in this program.
But I knocked you off track, and I do hear you on that.
Not at all.
So
you've got to get that guy that lights you up. And I promise, if you'll let go, just be in a state of repose for just a little bit. I'm just sitting back, watching what's going to happen. And I did that, and guess who walked in my life?
Me?
I wasn't raising my hand, was I?
No, you weren't. That's why it's on my miracle list. A guy that never raises his hand, who I wanted to be my sponsor, came up and offered his
sponsor. And this crazy newcomer comes in one night, breaks down that if anybody had a freaking heart and it wasn't touched, they're heartless. And I felt your pain. Like I had never felt somebody's pain in a long time. And I've said, there was a voice in my head that literally said, you've got to help this man. He's going down. And I felt like God drove me out of that seat and right over to you. And I said, I'm going to sponsor you. And then I said, I have some expectations or whatever I said.
Yep. But I walked out of that room that night, like you said about higher power. I walked out of that building that night and the stars were brighter. I knew something had just shifted. And I really didn't know it at the moment. I was down the road when I looked in the rearview mirror at that event. I knew my life had just taken a new trajectory.
But that's the natural, expected, and wanted result of sobriety, is you should both feel that. I felt that way driving home, and I was excited in what was going to happen. If you do not feel that way with your current sponsees, something is wrong. It should not be a chore. It should not be a have to. It should be an excitement. And, sometimes you have to kiss a lot of toads to find your prince.
Yeah.
So be willing to go through people and see if it's a good fit. I had one sponsee one time. I love how sponsors are so brilliant in their simplicity. This wasn't even one of my regular sponsors. I just had him for a very short time. Bob J., God rest his soul, a great, great guy here in Louisville. Hey, baby, how you doing, baby? He's just an amazing man. And I called him one night in a snit because I was just hitting walls with this guy, and I didn't know what was wrong. And I was like, and he goes, well, Christopher, sometimes it's just not a good fit. I was like, oh, I hate you. It's so obvious. I'm so smart, I missed it. And he's right. Sometimes the fit is not right. If you're struggling, then it's just let them go to find their right person. You're holding them back. Or if they're not ready and they don't want to do the work, there's not a damn thing you can do to make them do the work. And I like the idea that they're taking up a seat that right beside them is a guy who's dying and want what he has. And if you all are big book thumpers, that's on page 96, 97 of the big book, somewhere around in that range, where it says you may have to let him go for a while. He is denying another man the opportunity to live free and be happy. You hear that? That guy taking up that seat and not doing the work is denying another man a chance to live free and be happy. That's directly out of the big book. Our founder said that. There's a whole chapter to the employers where he talks about you may have to discharge your man if he's not doing what's expected. And yet I fight Bill and say, well, you can't fire a sponsor. Who does that? That's wrong. You should be. It's like that. Question everything you hear from anybody, even me, And if it doesn't agree with your own soul, as the Buddha said, or what you feel is right in your own heart, then follow your own path. But that's worked best for me. And so I would encourage you, if you're not feeling it, take a break, sit back, see what happens, and don't be surprised if God drops the juiciest guy that you've ever sponsored, ever. And I know you've sponsored juicy guys. I like all your guys. You got juicy people.
I have been blessed.
You got a great stable of folks. You got a tremendous army of warriors.
Yep, I'm proud of them.
Can you imagine God dropping you somebody in there that's just like a Dan the Man was to me, and takes you to that next level?
A very good point. Thank you.
And that's what it does for us. We're supposed to grow as sponsors. You, as my sponsee, is going to help me go to my next level and be my best self. So it's not a selfish proposition, even though it's called service work and all that stuff. There's so much payback. Best feeling in the world is to sponsor a guy.
Definitely is. It's brought more fruit to my life than any other thing I've ever done.
And so for that person with the first question today said they finished their steps almost, make sure you sponsor people, because that's the reward for all your hard work.
Yep.
You have no idea how good you're going to feel when you get a group of people.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like that guarantee I say, if I can guarantee you if you will work these steps, but that's part A. Part 2 is practice these principles in your daily life, and that includes sponsoring people, and you can have a brand new life.
I paused for a second there because that was something I had not been able to say the other night because I was sick. But during the birthday celebration, everything that was said about me in that room and everything that was given back to me in love, every piece of that was a direct result of me offering service to and being of use and being free of charge. That I'm just here to help and love on you first. It's a weird thing, man. If you give love first, the amount you get back is just unbelievable. So please don't deny yourself that, and we'll have a whole show on sponsorship in the future, I promise. So, great episode. Really appreciate all of y'all being here. Keep visiting with us. Keep sending us your questions at iam12recovery@gmail.com. Me and Dan will hold the seat in here, and we'll keep doing this for you. And please do us a favor. I won't ask you all but once every podcast. Like, subscribe, comment, even just a comment raises our algorithm in the YouTube universe so that when somebody's scrolling through their recommended vids, we might come up in the rotation. And if they click once, they might like what they hear, and we can build our network of other people getting this message and getting these tools. Please help us out. So thank you for being with us, and keep on rocking, and see what's next on the adventure wheel. Who knows what's possible for your life. We like to close the podcast with the Serenity Prayer, the way we do it in my group, a little bit funky. So, Dan, if you'd like to join me.
I sure will.
Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Just for today. Keep coming back. It works if you work it. You die if you don't. Thanks for being here, and we love you all. Please keep coming and send this message. Please pass this on to anybody you feel in your life needs some help. We want to be able to help them. Thank you for being with us.